Greetings from the Ignatius Press studios. I'm here to introduce to you Sue Ellen Browder, an author of an upcoming Ignatius Press book. The book is called Subverted: How I Helped the Sexual Revolution Hijack the Women's Movement. And Sue Ellen is a veteran journalist, and she did some investigative research into the background behind the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision and what happened to the women's movement leading up to that. And she's here to tell us about that. Sue Ellen, why did you write this book? Where was it starting?
It started when people started asking me, how did the sexual revolution join with the women's movement? The sexual revolution was obviously very detrimental to women, and the women's movement had some positive things going for it. Women wanted equal pay for equal work. They wanted equal education rights. So how did these two get joined together behind the scenes? People kept asking me that because I had written for Cosmopolitan, and I happened to know something that in those days was very obvious but has been forgotten. In 1970, when I worked for Cosmopolitan magazine, the women's movement and the sexual revolution were radically different movements. Betty Friedan called Cosmopolitan quite obscene and quite horrible. So how did those two get joined together behind the scenes? That's why I wrote this book.
And I'm sure this is a question that a lot of people have puzzled over, because the women's movement appears to be about respect for women, women's dignity, women's equality with men, and the sexual revolution just turned women into commodities. Aren't these opposed to each other? How did these things get together?
That's right.
And so you went in search of the answer to that question, and in the process, you also tell another story.
Well, I tell my own personal story, how I became a writer for Cosmopolitan magazine, even though I trained at the University of Missouri as an investigative journalist. How did I end up in this sex rag? And also, how did I become a Catholic out of all that? How did this old Cosmo girl become a Catholic?
Right, that's another story that's the subplot of the subversion, that story that's being told in this fascinating book. And you won't want to miss it, because it really tells things that a lot of people don't know, the behind-the-scenes power players who orchestrated the Roe v. Wade decision, how the women's movement itself got turned into a different thing from what it started.
That's right.
And who better than you to do this, because you lived through this period, a professional woman, a feminist in this period.
Yes, I was.
You're an eyewitness to these events.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.